7 demonic traps even the strongest dark chosen ones must avoid. There's a moment in every dark chosen one's life when the illusions begin to crack, not just the illusions of society, but the ones inside your own mind. You start to see through the veil, not because you read it in a book or heard it from a guru, but because something inside begins to wake up. It's not a peaceful awakening, it's violent, chaotic, unforgiving. Your old life begins to burn, and you're not given the luxury to walk away. You're dragged into a deeper reality. And if you've made it far enough to hear this, it means you're already past the first threshold. But what waits beyond that threshold? That's where the real danger begins. Because even the strongest among us can fall, especially the strong, especially those who carry the ancient codes of the dark chosen ones. You see, being chosen doesn't mean you're safe. It means you're targeted, not by enemies you can see, but by forces that exist between dimensions, cloaked in temptation, subtlety, and spiritual sabotage. These are the demonic traps, not the Hollywood kind, not the stuff of horror movies, but the traps that wear your face, your voice, your doubts. They don't come to scare you, they come to convince you. And that's what makes them so deadly. These traps don't just delay your path. They devour timelines. They fracture destinies. They keep even the most awakened souls spinning in loops, never quite breaking free.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lesson.
The first trap is pride disguised as empowerment. It begins when you start to realize you are different, that you have vision others don't, that your energy shifts rooms, that you see through lies without effort. This is real. It's part of your gift. But the moment your ego claims ownership of that power, the trap springs shut. Pride starts to whisper, "You're above them. You're ahead. You don't need to learn anymore. You're already there." And in that moment, you stop growing. You stop listening. You stop serving. And the energy which was once flowing through you starts to stagnate. This trap is so dangerous because it feels like power, but it's actually separation. And separation is the seed of every fall. The second trap is isolation masked as sovereignty. As chosen ones, we often walk alone. That's part of the path. But there is a difference between sacred solitude and spiritual isolation. One heals, the other destroys. When you begin to believe that no one can understand you, that no one is worthy of your truth, that your journey is too unique to be shared, you fall into the void. And in that void, entities feed. They whisper lies that sound like wisdom, but they push you deeper into separation until you forget that even the strongest warriors need mirrors. We need each other, not for validation, but for reflection. A true chosen one doesn't reject connection, they refine it. They seek those whose frequency matches their flame and walk together, even in silence. The third trap is obsession with knowledge instead of embodiment. Listen, I get it. We want to understand the matrix. We want to decode the sacred texts, master astrology, break down quantum mechanics, know every past life, every cosmic law. But knowledge without embodiment is spiritual inflation. It puffs you up but leaves your soul starving. You become a library with no life. You can quote every mystic but can't sit in silence with your own shadow. This trap is vicious because it feels productive. You feel like you're doing the work. but you're just hoarding information instead of integrating transformation. Real power isn't what you know. It's what you are when there's no one to impress. When it's 2 a.m. and your demons crawl in. When the voice in your head won't shut up. That's where embodiment lives. The fourth trap is spiritual bypassing, using higher truths to avoid lower pains. It sounds like this: everything happens for a reason. It's all love and light. I don't want to lower my vibration by feeling this. And on the surface, these may seem harmless, but beneath them is avoidance. You numb. You suppress. You pretend you've transcended emotions that are still festering in your field. And the demons. They love this, because every emotion you bury becomes a portal. Every pain you deny becomes a weakness in your spiritual armor. The only way out is through. You must feel it to free it. You must grieve the old self, rage at the betrayals, cry for the lifetimes you've lost. That is not weakness. That is clearing the path for your real power to rise. The fifth trap is false light. This one is sinister. It looks beautiful. It preaches unity, peace, ascension. But it's hollow. It's performative. It's cosmetic spirituality, Instagram gurus, polished rituals, curated enlightenment. But you start to feel like you have to be on all the time, like your awakening has to be aesthetic. But real awakening is messy. It's terrifying. It doesn't care about your brand. The false light trap disconnects you from your rawness, your wildness, your sacred rage. It tells you to be calm when your soul is roaring. It tells you to smile when your spirit is screaming. And in doing so, it silences the very fire meant to awaken the world. The sixth trap is addiction to suffering. But yes, you heard me. Some of us get so used to the pain, the struggle, the trauma cycles, that we begin to build our identity around them. We wear our wounds like badges. We start to believe that healing must always hurt, that growth must always be violent. And so we unconsciously recreate chaos just to feel spiritual. But healing is not just about breaking. It's about building. There comes a point where the lesson is not in the pain, it's in the joy. In learning how to receive, how to rest, how to laugh without guilt. If you can't trust peace, you're still in the trap. You're still letting the demons write your story. The seventh trap is forgetting why you came. This is the most dangerous of all. It happens slowly. A little compromise here, a little self-betrayal there. You start living for survival instead of purpose. You start making choices from fear instead of vision. And eventually you forget the mission. You forget the codes you were sent to deliver. You forget that your very existence is a disruption to the system. And the demons? They win when you forget. Because you were the glitch. You were the fire. You were the one meant to awaken others. But asleep, you're harmless. Awake, you're unstoppable. So I ask you now, which of these traps are you in right now? Which one is draining your power while whispering that everything's fine? But be honest, be brutal, because the next part of this journey, it requires total clarity. The darkness is watching, but so is the light. On the battlefield of frequency, how demons hijack your vibration without you noticing. Every day, every hour, in every breath you take, you are broadcasting a frequency. Not metaphorically, literally. Your thoughts, emotions, intentions, and even the silence between your words are emitting energy. That energy doesn't just float into space, that it becomes your reality. It becomes the lens through which the universe responds to you. And this is where the war begins, because you're not the only one listening to your frequency. Other forces are too. Some call them demons, some call them entities, but names don't matter. What matters is that they are real, and they feed not on your body, but on your vibration. And the way they hijack your field is so subtle, so insidious, you often don't even realize it until your life is already spiraling. You don't need to be possessed to be manipulated. You don't need to be cursed to be compromised. All it takes is a drop in frequency, and a single thought of unworthiness, a single moment of unconscious anger, then a single compromise of your truth. That's the doorway. That's the crack in your armor. And once it's open, these entities don't need to break in, they're invited. But they match their vibration to your lowest frequency and begin to blend in. They don't come screaming. They come whispering. They come with thoughts that sound like your own. You're not good enough. You should give up. Nobody really sees you. And over time you start to believe it. Not because it's true, but because you're vibrating at the frequency where it feels true. This is the battlefield of frequency. And the most terrifying part. Most people never even realize they're in it. They think they're just having a bad day. They think they're just tired, just stressed, just off. But what they don't see is that their vibration has been hijacked. Their soul has been tuned to a station that doesn't serve them, and now they're dancing to a frequency that isn't even theirs. Let me be clear, this isn't just a metaphor. Energy parasites are real. They live in the spaces of your unhealed wounds. They survive in environments of fear, shame, guilt, and despair. And they are intelligent. They learn your patterns. They know when you're vulnerable, after a heartbreak, after a betrayal, after a spiritual high that leaves you wide open. That's when they strike. That's when they plant thoughts that derail your path, weaken your will, and distort your perception of truth. This is why awareness is everything. You must become a master of your own frequency. You must learn to feel when your energy shifts, not after the damage is done, but the moment it begins. You must ask yourself constantly, is this thought mine? Is this emotion aligned with my highest self? Or is something trying to feed off of me? Because if you don't guard your vibration, someone else will use it. And here's the twist. These demonic forces don't always come with darkness. Sometimes they come dressed in light. They come through people who seem kind, relationships that feel fated, opportunities that look divine. But if you're not tuned to your truth, you'll fall for the illusion. You'll give your energy away to something that doesn't nourish your soul. That's why frequency is more important than appearances. That's why resonance matters more than logic. If something feels off, even if it looks perfect, trust your frequency. But it knows what your eyes can't see. Now let me ask you something so deep it might sting. What frequency are you most familiar with? What emotional tone has become your home? Because that's the baseline you're vibrating at, and that's the dimension you're living in. You could be surrounded by miracles and still miss them if your frequency is tuned to fear. You could be called to greatness and still sabotage it if you're vibrating at shame. You don't rise by doing more. You rise by vibrating higher. So how do you reclaim your frequency? First, you must cleanse, not just your body, but your energy field. Smudge, bathe in salt, sit in silence, disconnect from devices, cut cords with people who drain you. Your energy is sacred. Treat it like gold. Then you must anchor. Start your day with intention. Speak words of truth. Visualize your highest self. Choose music, food, and environments that elevate you. And most importantly, feel. Don't suppress. Don't bypass. Feel everything fully, then let it go. That's how you stay sovereign. That's how you stay free. This war won't be won through force. It will be won through frequency, because the moment you become unshakable in your vibration, the demons can't reach you. They can't feed off a soul that's aligned. They can't survive in light that doesn't flinch. And that's your power. The soul contract you forgot, how ancient agreements still control your life today. There are forces guiding your life that don't begin with your childhood. They don't start with your parents, your culture, or even this body you wear. They begin far beyond this incarnation, before your name, before your first breath, in realms where time doesn't move in a straight line, but spirals inward like sacred geometry. You made choices in those realms. You agreed to certain experiences. You formed soul contracts, some beautiful, others binding. And even now, those forgotten contracts are shaping your reality. They are influencing your relationships, your recurring struggles, your deepest desires, and your strangest fears. And if left unexamined, they become invisible puppeteers pulling the strings of your destiny. You didn't come into this world empty-handed. You came with codes, with karma, with missions. But you also came with agreements, some made in love, others in desperation, and a few in moments of spiritual blindness. You may have agreed to carry your ancestral pain. You may have agreed to delay your joy in order to awaken others. You may have promised to never love fully again after a soul-shattering betrayal in another lifetime. These contracts are not always logical. They are energetic imprints etched into the soul, and they act like software running in the background of your consciousness. You don't see them, but they're always running, always influencing, always shaping your timeline. That's why you keep attracting the same lesson in different forms, why every relationship ends in the same wound, why every breakthrough is followed by a breakdown. It's not because the universe is cruel. It's because your soul is loyal to the agreements you made before you forgot who you are. And the truth is, loyalty to outdated contracts is the hidden root of most spiritual stagnation. You can meditate for hours, chant mantras, raise your frequency, do all the right things, but if your soul is still bound by an unconscious promise, you'll keep hitting the same wall, over and over, lifetime after lifetime. Let me ask you something that may shake the foundation of your spiritual identity. What if some of your suffering is not a lesson, but a contract you no longer need to honor? What if you're carrying pain that doesn't belong to you anymore, but you continue to hold it because you once agreed to? Not all contracts are eternal. Some were meant only for a season. Some were made under duress. Some were formed when you were a different version of yourself, less aware, less sovereign, more reactive. But the moment you awaken to this truth, you gain the power to renegotiate, to revoke, to rewrite. You are not powerless in this. In fact, the most powerful thing you can do is remember. Sit in silence and ask your soul, What agreements am I still honoring that are no longer aligned with my evolution? Be still. Listen. You may receive an image, a word, a sudden emotional wave. That's your soul showing you the contract. And when you see it, don't ignore it. Bring it into the light. Speak its name. And then, with full authority, declare, I now release all contracts, vows, and energetic agreements that no longer serve my highest timeline. I reclaim my sovereignty across all dimensions, all timelines, all lifetimes. This isn't just a ritual, it's a recalibration. Because when you break an outdated contract, your frequency shifts, your timeline updates, people fall away, new opportunities appear. You begin to feel lighter, clearer, more aligned. That's not coincidence. That's the consequence of spiritual freedom. The demons that once fed on your soul's confusion lose their grip. The patterns that once defined you begin to dissolve. You stop living from obligation and start living from choice. But here's the warning. Not everyone will celebrate your liberation. Some soul contracts involve people who are still attached to the old version of you. When you break the contract, they may resist. They may guilt you, attack you, or try to pull you back into the role you used to play. This is part of the test. Will you choose your evolution or your comfort, your freedom or your familiarity? Because every time you ascend, something must be left behind. That's the price. That's the offering. And sometimes it's not just people or wounds you release. Sometimes it's lifetimes. Sometimes it's entire versions of yourself that no longer serve the mission. You must be willing to lay them at the altar of your becoming. You must have the courage to say, that version of me was necessary, but I am no longer her. I am no longer him. I am something new. So I ask you again, with your soul wide open, what have you agreed to that it's finally time to undo? Because the moment you remember, you are free. The final trap, how the illusion of awakening becomes the last prison. There's a moment on the path where you feel like you've made it. You've survived the storms, you've endured the losses. You've broken through illusions, reclaimed your energy, released contracts, and burned down everything that wasn't you. You feel lighter, sharper, more spiritual. You speak with more confidence. People begin to look to you for answers. But you begin to feel like a guide, a beacon, and you are. But here lies the most dangerous trap of all, the illusion of awakening. Because the moment you believe you're fully awakened, you stop evolving. And that's exactly when the final prison begins to close around you. This trap is so subtle, so seductive, that even the strongest fall into it. It's not obvious like pride or ego. It's wrapped in language that sounds wise. It looks like stillness, but it's actually stagnation. It feels like peace, but it's actually paralysis. You begin to identify with your spiritual self-image. You build a new identity around being awakened, and slowly, without realizing it, you become trapped in that identity. You stop asking questions. You stop challenging your own beliefs. You stop being curious. And the journey which was once a living, breathing fire becomes a polished statue, beautiful on the outside, hollow on the inside. You begin to think you've seen it all, that you've transcended the matrix, that your vibration is too high to be tested. But the truth is, the higher you go, the more subtle the tests become, the more refined the illusions. the more sophisticated the traps. And if you stop moving energetically, emotionally, spiritually, you become a monument to your past growth instead of a vessel for continued transformation. And the worst part, you won't even know it's happening, because you'll still look awakened. You'll still talk the talk, but deep inside, the fire will be gone. This is the final trap: spiritual self-satisfaction. Awakening becomes the new ego. You begin to protect your awakening instead of surrendering deeper into it. You start to fear being wrong. You fear not knowing. You fear being seen as less evolved. So you hide your confusion. You suppress your darkness. You pretend you've healed what's still bleeding. And eventually you're not growing anymore, you're performing. Performing enlightenment. Performing peace. Performing power. And that's the most dangerous prison of all, the one built from truth that has calcified into identity. Let me ask you something that most awakened people are afraid to ask themselves. What part of your awakening has become a performance? What truth are you clinging to just because it makes you feel superior or safe? Because if you can't challenge your own beliefs, you're not free. You're just trapped in a prettier cage. Real awakening never ends. It's not a destination. It's a spiral, a shedding, a continuous death and rebirth. The moment you think you've arrived is the moment you've stopped walking. The truth is, we are all still waking up, even the masters, even the mystics. Because awakening is not about becoming someone new, it's about endlessly dissolving everything you are not. And that process, it doesn't stop. Not in this life, not in the next, not ever. So how do we escape the final trap? We remain humble. We remain students. We stay curious. We admit when we don't know. We welcome the unraveling. We stop performing and start feeling again. We let ourselves be broken open again and again. We allow the mystery to be bigger than our ego, bigger than our teachings, bigger than our need to be seen as awakened. Because the truth is, the more awakened you become, the less you need to speak about it. The more powerful you are, the less you need to prove it. Real awakening is silent, subtle, humble, and it's never finished. So I ask you one last question: are you brave enough to keep awakening, even if it means letting go of everything you thought awakening was? That is the final key. That is the way out of the last prison. And that is where your true freedom begins.